Hello everybody, this is Gerardo Cruz, and right now I'm going to tell you about my life during this coronavirus pandemic. There's no doubt that my life and your life has been different for the last few weeks with this coronavirus taking place. This coronavirus is not just affecting Colorado or the United States. This coronavirus, known as COVID-19, is affecting most of the world. This virus started in China towards the beginning of 2020. And just in the last few weeks, back in March, did this virus start affecting the United States, just like it was affecting many other countries around the world. COVID-19 started becoming a major problem here in the United States in the beginning of March and towards the middle of March. Up until then, myself and all of you, we are all living our normal everyday lives. But when we got to the middle of March, our lives changed very fast. And just after COVID-19 started affecting the United States, it started becoming a problem here in Colorado. And when that started taking place, that's when my life turned around. And no matter if you're in Colorado or in another state here in the United States or even in another country somewhere around the world, COVID-19 has definitely been affecting most of our lives, including mine. I started seeing the effects of COVID-19 and how it started changing my everyday life when it was the middle of March. And there's no doubt that in the last few weeks, my life and your life has been different. No matter who you are, it doesn't matter if you're lower, middle, upper class, a public or private person, a normal everyday person, a public figure, a celebrity. COVID-19 has been affecting almost anyone, and it doesn't matter what your status is or who you are on this planet. This virus can affect anyone, and we've definitely seen that in the last few weeks. And it doesn't matter where you live on this planet, it has been affecting a lot of people. With the coronavirus taking place, once it started becoming a major problem here in the United States and it made its way to Colorado, that's when I started noticing that my everyday life suddenly changed. And it was just overnight. Before March, the coronavirus was a major problem in other countries around the world. But when the coronavirus became a major problem here in the United States and it made its way to Colorado, once we got towards the middle of March, that's when I noticed my life was about to change. And there's no doubt that my life and even your life has been different for the last few weeks. And it just hasn't been a short period of time. It's been a long temporary time period, and it's definitely been many weeks that this coronavirus has affected my life and your life and all of our normal everyday lives. For me, when the coronavirus started becoming a problem and affecting my normal everyday life, it was when I was in school. And we were just getting towards the middle of the spring semester on the Auraria campus at MSU Denver. And that's when I started noticing that the coronavirus was going to affect my everyday life, and possibly the rest of the semester, as it was only the first half of the spring semester, and we still had the second half of the spring semester to go. About 2 weeks before my spring break is when I noticed the coronavirus was going to be a major problem for my campus, for myself, for other students, faculty and staff, and even for other universities across the U.S. When I started getting emails in regards to the coronavirus from the president of MSU Denver and from officials that are in charge of different departments on our area campus, that's when I knew the coronavirus was going to be a major problem for our campus and for all the students, staff, and faculty on our area campus. I also knew that myself and everybody else was going to have to take the coronavirus very seriously. In those 2 weeks before my spring break, the college experience for myself and for the rest of the students that attend MSU Denver or our area campus, that started changing in the matter of those days during that 2-week period before our spring break. When I started getting more emails from the president of MSU Denver updating myself and everybody else about the coronavirus, I knew that the coronavirus was going to affect the rest of the spring semester. And in a matter of that 2-week period, the following week, that's when the president of MSU Denver announced everything was going to transition to online at the end of spring break. And by time that we returned back from spring break, all the courses were going to be online for possibly the rest of the semester, which landed up happening that all of our courses were online for the rest of the semester. Now, with my courses being online for the rest of the semester, it didn't really bother me because I have taken online classes in the past. So I was used to doing online classes. The only problem was, no matter what you're majoring in, there's some classes, and even some classes that I was currently in, that it's really hard or impossible to do that class online. And that's a class that you have to do on campus. So that was one thing that was challenging about doing online classes that should have been on campus. But guess what? Myself and many other students, we were able to make it. And the one thing I could say about this time period was I was able to make it through this spring semester by doing all of my courses online. So that is one thing I'm proud about. What made the rest of this spring semester really weird, for me especially, was how I was doing all of my classes online and how I couldn't have that college experience of being on campus for the rest of the spring semester the way I've had that experience in previous semesters at MSU Denver. And it just felt weird knowing that spring break was over and I should be back on campus going to all my classes, And I'm at home doing all of my classes online. And when I signed up for courses to take in the spring semester, I didn't sign up for any classes to be online. So that was one thing that was weird, to do my classes online and know that I should actually be on campus going to my classes. And going back to that 2-week period before spring break, that's when everything started transitioning, especially when I was in school. And just in the matter of those few days during that time period is when everything started transitioning to online. No matter what it was or what courses you were in, it was starting to be online during that time period before spring break. And if it wasn't, after spring break, it was definitely going to be online for the rest of the semester. There's no doubt that this semester was definitely different from previous semesters. After all of the semesters that I've been at MSU Denver. And I'm hoping that in the next few semesters that I have at MSU Denver before I graduate, I hope I don't have to experience another semester like I did with the spring semester in 2020. But there's no doubt that the spring semester in 2020 was completely different from all the previous semesters at MSU Denver. During that 2-week time period before spring break, when all the courses and everything else was starting to transition to online, that was definitely a different experience, since just a few weeks before, in January and February, before we got to March, the semester was normal. And I was living a normal, everyday life. No matter if I was on Auraria campus, at work, or at home. And when it was New Year's, when it was time to say goodbye to 2019 and hello to 2020, who would have thought that 2020 would have started the way it has so far? And I hope that this coronavirus comes to an end in the next few weeks, and we can all get back to living our normal everyday lives. Even though 2020 has started the way it has in the first few months of the year, there's still many more months left in 2020. And even though a lot of people are saying that 2020 is the worst year ever, let's make the last few months of 2020 one of the best years. Even though 2020 didn't start the way it should have, we can make the second half of 2020 a great year. Especially if we can get back to living our normal, everyday lives. There's no doubt that the life that myself and most of you have been living for the last few weeks, it's definitely been different compared to our normal, everyday lives. And taking a look back at these last few weeks, myself and many of you have probably never experienced something like this take place in the past. What's making this situation really weird is that you have to stay home. And it wasn't just a few days. It was many weeks. And I hope this time period comes to an end in the next few weeks. Even though many people would say this is the worst time period of their life, I don't like to think negative even though it's not a great time period. Since I don't like to think negative and I like to think positive, during these last few weeks, I've tried to make the best of this situation, even though it's not a great situation. And there's no doubt that my life has been different since I am currently going to school at MSU Denver. And for the second half of the spring semester, I had to do all of my courses online for the rest of the semester after spring break. And it was just weird doing my classes online and not going to Auraria campus after spring break when it's time to get back to the spring semester. It was just weird to be at home and not be going to campus, knowing that I should be on campus going to my classes, but instead I'm at home doing all my classes online. And when I signed up for all my courses, when I was signing up for the spring semester, I had never signed up for any of my courses to be online. So that was one thing that was weird about my school experience during my junior year at MSU Denver. Also, for these last few weeks, myself and many of you all, since we had to stay home, we also couldn't work. And since I work at the stadiums, I couldn't go work any events, no matter what type of event it was, at any of the stadiums. And I couldn't work any games. For the last few weeks, it was weird to be at home, especially because I work at the stadiums, and I should be working all the events that should be at the stadiums right now and in the last few weeks. I should have been working all the Rockies games at Coors Field since the Major League Baseball season should have been playing right now. It would have been the regular season, the NBA, the NHL. Those seasons should have been playing. We should have seen the rest of the regular season. We should currently be seeing the playoffs. Also, I should have been working different types of events at Mile High Stadium, even though the NFL season and the Broncos are not playing right now. It was just weird for me to be at home and not be working any of those events. Also, I have never experienced something like this, just like most of you haven't experienced something like this, where there's no sports playing. And it doesn't matter what league it is or what sporting event it was. There wasn't any sports playing for the last few weeks and since the middle of March. So it was really hard to get through all these weeks not seeing sports. And myself and many of you all have probably never experienced something like that take place in the past. And hopefully something like that doesn't take place going into the future, because it was hard to get through this time period. Another thing was that we couldn't live our normal everyday lives. And no matter who we are, and no matter what we do, we couldn't go to work, no matter what job we work. If we were in school, we couldn't go to school, no matter where you go to school. The other thing that was hard to get through was that we couldn't go anywhere except for grocery stores, pharmacies, doctor offices, or hospitals if we were sick. Those were some of the only places that were open, and the majority of everything else was closed. And it was hard to get through that time period because we had to stay at home and we couldn't go anywhere unless it was those 4 places that I listed, because we needed something so we could live our lives, or if we were sick, we had to go to the doctor's office or the hospital to get treatment so we can get better if we happen to get sick during this time period or we got the coronavirus. That was probably one of the hardest things for me to get through, was that I couldn't go anywhere because almost everything was closed. And I hope something like that never happens again going into the future. And going back to spring break, most of us, including myself, we were happy for spring break coming up, and most of us had plans to go on a vacation for spring break. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. For myself, and for many of you, when we were making plans for spring break, who would have thought that something like this would have took place starting in March, where we couldn't go on vacation or do anything during spring break because of the coronavirus? And for me, I definitely didn't have plans for staying home during spring break, and because of this virus, I had to stay home because I was going to go out of state for spring break, but I couldn't go to where I was going because of this virus. And during spring break, because I had to stay home, it just didn't seem like it was spring break. The one thing that was hard for me, and for many of you, was that we couldn't go anywhere because almost everything was closed. No matter if it was during the week or on the weekend, and no matter where we go during the week or on the weekend. This time period was hard for me because I couldn't go anywhere. And since the gyms were closed, but we were allowed to go outside, the way I was able to get my daily exercise, as long as the weather was nice outside during this time period, was by going outside and walking the dog or exercising in the park that is next to my neighborhood. And since there wasn't any sports playing during this time period, another way that I was able to get through this time period, since I like sports, was that I was able to go outside and play basketball. And since I have liked basketball from a young age, and I had always played basketball, I would go outside and play basketball because I like sports, I like basketball, but also I was able to get my daily exercise in. So basketball was the one thing that got me through this time period. Especially since there wasn't any sports playing because of the virus, and since the majority of all the places that we go to on a weekly basis was closed, which included the gym, I had to go outside to get my daily exercise. And by playing basketball, that was one of the ways I was able to get my daily exercise. But there's no doubt, for myself and for many of you all, this time period was a hard time period to get through. And it was many weeks, and it seemed like it wasn't going to end, and it was just going to continue on and on and on. And I'm not going to lie, for myself and probably for many of you all, it started getting boring after a while, after week passed. But one of the ways that I was able to get through this time period, since I had to stay home, just like many of you all, was that I was able to do a lot of things around the house. And I was able to do different projects and clean around the house so I could make my house look better. And since this was a long time period, I was able to clean my entire house and every room in my house. That was also another way that I was able to get through this time period. Since this was a long time period that we had to stay home, the way I made this experience better was by doing things around the house so time would pass. And during this time period, I was able to get everything done around the house. And the majority of things that I was able to do during this time period around the house, I probably wouldn't have gotten done until the summertime, because I just wouldn't have the time during the semester with having to go to school, do schoolwork, having to go to work, and do other things on a weekly basis. So the one good thing about this time period was that I was able to accomplish and get a lot of things done around the house that I probably wouldn't have gotten done until the summertime, once I was done with the spring semester. Even though this was a long time period that we had to stay home, and it seemed like it was never going to end, during this time period, I tried to make every day and every week a better experience and a positive experience. Because I didn't want to think like the majority of other people and make it a negative experience, even though it was a long time period that we had to stay home. So with this experience with the coronavirus, I tried to make the best out of it. And the one thing I could say about this time period, even though it wasn't a great time period, was that I was able to make this time period a good experience for myself. And I was able to get a lot done around the house. With this coronavirus affecting most of the world, many countries, the United States, many states, and even Colorado, it was a long time period, and it seemed like it wasn't going to end anytime soon. Even though this time period was a very long time and it lasted many weeks, I hope this coronavirus comes to an end sometime in the next few weeks going into the future. And I really hope that myself and all of you, I hope that we can all get back to living our normal everyday lives sometime in the next few weeks. And I hope that I can be living my normal everyday life sometime in the next few months, towards the end of 2020. But I really hope life will get back to the way it was at the beginning of 2020. And the way we were living life in January and February, I hope that we can be living life the way we were sometime in the next few months, towards the end of 2020. But the one thing that this coronavirus experience has taught me was to not take life for granted. Because my life can change very fast, just like all of your lives can change very fast. And with this coronavirus pandemic, our lives changed in a matter of seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, and months. So with this coronavirus pandemic, it taught me to not take life for granted. Because my life can change in a matter of a few heartbeats. And I hope sometime in the next few weeks, we can all get back to living our normal everyday lives. But going into the future, I will never take life for granted. Everything that I have in my life, I am thankful for, and I will never take any of those things for granted going into the future for the rest of my life. I really hope that this coronavirus pandemic ends sometime in the next few weeks. And just like Mike, the situation from Jersey Shore says, the comeback is always greater than the setback. And I hope that's true with this coronavirus pandemic. Until next time, this is Gerardo Cruz.